So you want to be a marksman. So you want to play a class where distance matters. Then you've come to the right class. So Arrow Blow is your first job skill. It attacks up to 4 enemies, and it does auto-aim, so if you attack too high, it will aim down and hit the enemies. Double Jump is, just as it says, a double jump. You can go left and right, or if you jump and press up twice, you can do a vertical jump. And the rest are passive. Moving on to second job, you get Iron Arrow, which is a straight shot, which means that it doesn't auto-aim, so if you aim too high, it won't really aim down and hit the enemies. And yeah, just shoot straight. That's pretty much all it does. I believe it attacks up to 5 enemies. I could be wrong about that, let me make sure. Up to 6 enemies. So just, you know, mobbing skill. And then we have Rangefinder. And this skill, based on your distance from the enemy, can either increase the defense you ignore, or the final damage that you do. So when you're close to the enemy, you ignore up to 30%? You ignore up to 20% enemy defense. And when you're far from the enemy, you can have an increase of up to 30% final damage. Because I'm not really going over it here, maybe after the dojo part, after the bossing, I'll test this on a dojo dummy so that we can all see what the distance is. Because it says based on a distance of 200. I'm not really sure, like, yeah, I'll test it later. So if you want to see that, go to the end of the video. Net Toss. Oh my god. Okay, so this skill moves you backwards now. That is new. But what it does is when you use it, it'll blast you back and then slow down the enemies that you hit with it. Up to 2 seconds? 4 seconds. So they're slowed down for 4 seconds and there's a cooldown of 8 seconds. When used on bosses, everything is reduced by half, so it slows them down for 50%, and the duration that they're slowed down is reduced, so that's only 2 seconds on bosses. I never really used it, so I mean maybe someone can find a reason to use it, but I never really used it. Crossbow Booster increases your attack speed by 2. Soul Arrow for crossbow increases your attack by 30. And allows you to use attacks without having to use arrows. And the rest are passive. Moving on to third job, you get Explosive Bolt. Oops. And Explosive Bolt works a lot like, what's the skill called? Either Reflection or, not really Reflection, doesn't go that far. But it works a lot like Chain Lightning, where you hit the first enemy, and then it'll bounce off of the first enemy and hit the enemies around it. The first enemy will take additional damage. I believe it's 185% extra damage. 182%. Well, mine's not maxed, so it's 182, but I'm sure once you max it, it's 200. Probably. And yeah, it just bounces off the first enemy you hit and goes to the next ones. Great mobbing skill. Dragon's Breath allows you to push enemies away from you, and the more enemies you push back, the farther the enemy is pushed. So if I were to push this guy, he goes about that far. If I push all of these guys, come on, all of you group up, then they go much farther. Well, there's only 3, but you can push up to 6 enemies, or 9 enemies, I think. Yeah, you can push up to 9 enemies, so you can push them very far. Or at least far enough for Rangefinder to, you know, be at a good damage boost. Freezer. So, Freezer is your first summon, or your only summon really, until 5th job. And what it does is it freezes enemies that you attack, or it just freezes enemies near you. So this is great for saving potions because you don't have to worry about getting attacked if the enemies are frozen. So yeah, that's pretty much all that is. Hookshot. This skill is great for getting around maps because it gives you invincibility, and it also pulls you to the enemy. Or past the enemy, really. But it gives you invincibility frames during the whole thing. And let's say I want to get to the top platform, but for some reason my jump didn't make it, like if I do this. Well, then I could just use Hookshot, and it'll drag me up to the top platform. So I'll try to do it again without lag. Nope. There we go. Painkiller. When you use Painkiller, it cures almost all abnormal status, and gives you 1 extra second to be immune to abnormal statuses. So if you're poisoned, stunned, well, I don't know about stunned, but if you're like poisoned or seduced or something like that, it'll cure it for you. Reckless Hunt. Reduces your avoidability, but increases your crit damage by 20%. And it is a toggle skill, so you can just turn it on and leave it on, or if you die you have to turn it on again, and then you can also take it off just by pressing it again. Mortal Blow is a passive, but it grants you 10%, there's a 10% chance to increase your damage by 20%, and when it activates, you also recover 1% HP and MP. And you can tell when it activates by the little purple thing that appears below the enemy's feet. I'm going to try to proc it here. There it is. Next is Aggressive Resistance. And when you attack, you get this shield above you that reduces the damage that you take, or it absorbs 60% of the damage that you take. But only when you attack, and it only lasts for 8 seconds. But if you keep attacking, it lasts as long as you keep attacking. Oh, I just noticed that the purple thing appears above your head as well, so you don't have to look at the monster for Mortal Blow. So Marksman is a very defensive bowman, archer. I mean, who doesn't want to take 60% less damage? It's really good. Evasion Boost is another passive. You have a 30% chance to dodge an enemy's attack, and when you do, all of your attacks for the next 1 second, or, yeah, I said that right. So all of your attacks for the next second will be critical hits, but only if you get that 30% dodge. And another passive. So, moving on to 4th job. We get Piercing Arrow, your new mobbing skill, and basically your main skill until I think around 143? Well, anyway. So, Piercing Arrow. When you hit an enemy, the next enemy will take more damage. And it just continues to gain more damage the more enemies you hit. Without any hypers, I believe it only hits 6 enemies. Yeah, it hits 6 enemies 4 times. And the final damage is increased by 15% for every enemy that it hit. Then it says something about damage is doubled. I think that only counts for the 6th enemy that you hit, or the last enemy that you hit. Not too sure. Oh, you know what? Let me show you. So like if I only hit 1 enemy, I did about 2 mils. And if I hit a bunch of enemies... No, I didn't get to see it. You get the idea. You just do a lot of damage on the last enemy. So there I did 4 mils. But the first enemy only took like 2s. Alright. And then we get Snipe. And Snipe is your bossing skill once you hit 143. Because otherwise it has a 5-second cooldown. But this skill hits 5 times and ignores 20% enemy defense and always crits. So it always does critical hits. Has a cooldown of 5 seconds though. You'll see later on we can reduce that to nothing. So it has no cooldown. But it looks like this. There we go. Eero Illusion. So this is another skill that kind of keeps the enemies in one area. So when you put it down, it has 100,000 HP, and every time it zaps the enemies, it drags them closer to the center of it. So it keeps them in place and stuns them, so that you can hit them with piercing arrow. Not only that, but every time it gets hit, it reflects 200% damage back to the enemy. 200% of the damage it took. It also works as a distraction skill. So if these guys are attacking me, well, let's say it was a boss, and then I put it on the opposite side, then they would start attacking that instead. Like that. And it lasts for 30 seconds and has a cooldown of 20 seconds. Sharp Eyes increases you and your party members' crit rate by 20% and the crit damage by 15%. Illusion Step increases your dex by 40 and your avoidability by 30%. You also take less damage, but that's passive ability. Hero's Will cures most abnormal status and leaves you immune to another abnormal status for 3 seconds. Maple Warrior increases you and your party members' all stats by 15%. Passive Bolt Surplus increases Rangefinder's effect and also increases the number of hits multi-hitting attacks does? Whatever. So, Piercing Shot, which normally does, 5 lines? 4 lines, now does 5. And Snipe, which normally does 5 lines, now does 6. And Rangefinder has a max defense ignore of 50%, because before it was 20%, but this increases it by 30, so now you have 50% ignore. And it increases the final damage by 40%, which means you have 70% final damage ignore. Or final damage boost, oh my god. So that's very good. So, since the defense ignore is 50% here, and then you get another 50% later on, as you'll see here, that means that if you're super far away from the enemy, you can ignore all their defense. But I mean, enemies move around, and you're not always going to be at the max distance. But while I'm here, let me talk about Vital Hunter. So, when you're really close to the enemy, you ignore 10% of their defense. And it'll keep being increased by 4% up to 50%, depending on how far away you are from the enemy. So at max distance, it's 50%. And then Last Man Standing is another passive, which when you are attacking something and there's nothing around it, so if I attack this guy, there's an enemy next to it, so it's not going to activate. But when you attack an enemy that is pretty much alone, bossy, then your final damage is increased by 20%. And that's about it for 4th job. So moving on to passive hypers. Oh, by the way, when building up Marksman, first thing I did was add into this, because you want your attacks to hit more than just, you want them to hit one extra time, one extra line. So Pierce would, hit more often, or not more often, more lines. So I didn't add into any Sharp Eyes, because I didn't really feel like I needed to. I didn't really like any of the effects. I did, however, put into Piercing Shot to give it 20% extra damage, and allow it to hit one more time on top of the Bolt Surplus. So now it'll hit 6 times. And then I did all 3 of the Snipe hyper passives, because I want to be able to spam it, so it has no cooldown. I also gave it 20% damage, and 10% damage to bosses. As for active hypers, I love this 150 hyper skill. It has so many things going for it. So Phantoms, steal this skill. It's great. So, it increases your crit rate by 20%, your crit damage by 10%, the amount of defense you ignore by 20%, and the amount of damage you do by 20%. And it lasts for 30 seconds and has a cooldown of 90 seconds, which is really short. Great skill. Great skill. And then we have the 170 hyper, which is High Speed Shot. And this skill is just another mobbing skill. I never really use it for bossing unless the boss is out of my attacking range. Because this skill has a pretty good range to it. If I can't hit something by jumping, I can like jump and use high speed. So like Pierce won't hit the top platform. Snipe also won't hit the top platform unless I use like this or something, like the vertical flash jump. But High Speed Shot will. And it attacks up to 15 enemies, what was it, 5 times? So it hits up to 12 enemies 5 times, although that's actually changed to 6 times because of the Bolt Surplus skill. And it only has a 15-second cooldown. Very strong, by the way. It's a very strong skill. Like, Snipe has a 730% damage, this has 750. So it's basically Snipe, but mobbing. And then at level 200, you get Epic Adventurer, which is your 200 hyper skill. Did I already say that? Whatever. And it increases you and your party members as long as they're explorers. It increases your damage by 10%. And it stacks with other adventures as well. So if you have a hero, or a Dark Knight, or a Bowmaster, or any other explorer, you can all just stack it on top of each other. So 10% from you, 10% from the other people, and yeah, it just keeps stacking. Alright, so now we can get into some mobbing, and then we'll show you some bossing. The mobbing's pretty simple with this class, actually. You just go around, Pierce shot everything. You could worry about distance if you want, but I don't usually worry about it. I just mob. I just use Pierce. There is a little trick that you can do, which is use Hookshot and then use Pierce. So Hookshot and then Pierce, and you'll go through the enemies with invincibility and attack them at the same time. And that's a little trick that I used to do when I was mobbing with this class. You don't have to, you can just do this. You can just go around shooting things. But if you want to save potions, you could always do that. And yeah, let's move on to the bossing. I didn't even take out Articuno. As a marksman, I like to activate the 150 hyper, 200 hyper, and then just snipe. Sometimes when fighting Von Leon, I'll put the Eero Illusion on the opposite side, so he goes after that. But since he's so big and his attacks hit the whole screen, it doesn't really matter. But sometimes it'll help me avoid that roar, which stuns you, and then I'll just snipe. So I found it really hard not to use the 5th job skills in this video. Because they're so good. One of them helps you a lot with mobbing and the other one helps you with bossing, so... Or it helps you with both, really. Oh my god. Split shot. When I get to the marksman 5th job skills, just trust me, they get so much better after 5th job. They might look lame in this video, but oh my god. Split shot is so good. And then the other skill, I forgot what it's called, like the sniping FPS skill, whatever. That one's really good too. Gives you invincibility. But anyway, that's all for now. Let's go ahead and see the Rangefinder, like test or whatever. And then, yeah, that's about it. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope to see you in the next one. And have a great day or night or whatever. Just be good. Everyone be good. Everything's good. Why am I even talking anymore? I already said bye. Thanks. Alright, so here's the Rangefinder test. So, when up close, seems that I do 2 mil at the most. Oh, there goes 2.1 mil. And the least was 1.7. I don't see any 1.6s. Alright, so if we move back a little bit, it should go up. Oh, now I see some 1.6s. And we kind of lost the 2 mils. Oh, there's 1 2 mil. So, anywhere within about that distance, I would say you're still in the ignore defense category. Oh, and don't mind the bottom number, that says like 2.6, that's only 260k, it's not mils. That's from final attack. Alright, so now we'll move about this far. And now we're getting mostly 2 mils. So this is where we start getting the damage bonus. And then if I move even further back, now we're starting to see some 3 mils. Oh, let me rebuff. Alright, so once again, we're starting to see 3 mils. And I move back even more. Now we're seeing a lot more 3 mils. Move a little further back. Seeing a lot more 3 mils. It's about the same actually. Ooh, that one was almost all 3 mils. Move even further back. So I think the max distance you need to be away from the enemy is when I first started hitting a lot of 3 mils. Because then you start to really see a difference in the damage. So even this far away, I'm still doing a lot of damage. But I think if I get any closer... No, we're still doing 3 mils. I wish there was a way to show the distance that you are. So yeah, this is too close. But I think anywhere from the stairs and the yellow flag is alright. So I wish that they had some kind of indicator, like maybe the hit, like the actual hit itself. Instead of being yellow, it's... Okay, so maybe yellow is like the you're close, and then change it to maybe red or blue or something. Well, I guess red would make more sense. When you're actually at the maximum distance, or yeah, just when you have the damage increase. I feel like that would be best. Or something, just some kind of indicator to tell us that we're too close or we're too far. Or not too far, but far enough. Alright, so that's all that I wanted to show with that.